Next up, let's add the individual dog detail component. So I can click here or visit a URL like dogs/Hazel and see the dog details for Hazel. So I'm going to make that component now, and I'll call it dogdetails.js, create the component, and then the first thing we should do is just set up our route after I do this export. And our route inside of app.js is going to be /dogs/, and we can call it dog name or just name or ID, some path variable. Now we have two problems here. The first is React is going to yell at me because we're returning JSON item sibling elements, which is not allowed. So I'm going to wrap them in a switch because we only want one to match. The other problem we have is that, well, aside from returning dog list here, which is not what we want to do, if I just returned an H1 that said dog details, and I go to /dog/Hazel, I'm still not seeing it. And that is happening because this is matching before this. I go to /dogs/Hazel, it still starts with /dogs. So we're going to add exact to both of those, as we've seen many times. Now if I go to /dog/Hazel, I'm getting the correct render. So instead of this, we're going to define our dog details. We've already done that, so I'm going to import it up top. Import dog details from ./dog details, and then down here, we'll do our same thing. So dog details, but instead of passing in all of the dogs, like we did here, we're only going to pass in the relevant dog based off of this name. And the way I'm going to set this up is sort of different. I'm going to define a function called getDog, which will take some props in and extract the name. So let's call it name, props.match.params.name. That's where we find that path variable. Right now this won't work, right? I need to connect getDog to this route, but I'm simply defining this assuming that I'm going to have the data. Then we're going to try and find the current dog, or the dog that we want, which I'll just do this.props.dogs.find. And then I'm going to say for each dog, the one that we want, dog.name is equal to name, this name, coming from match.params.name. And just to be safe, I'm going to lowercase each one, name.to lowercase, so that if you go to /Hazel with a capital H, it still matches. And then what I'm going to do is return from here a dog details component, and I'm going to add in all of the props that were passed in, and I'm going to set dog to be current dog, which is the dog that we selected here. Then I need to make sure I'm using getDog inside of this route. So this is something a little different as far as how I'm organizing this here. What I can actually do is just right in line say render equals getDog. This route will automatically pass the route props that we've seen before into getDog, which accepts them, uses the params.name to find the dog, and then finally returns a dog details component where we pass through all the props that it received and passes in a new dog that we've selected. So it's slightly different, the structure, but remember that if we don't define our own function like this inside of render, if we don't do that, render will automatically pass in the route props for us. So we can take advantage of that up here. Then instead of my dog details, let's just start with a simple div with an h1 that says this.dog.name. or this.props.dog.name. That's what we passed it in under. So now if I go to dog/Hazel, we're getting that name Hazel. If I go to dogs/ let's go to whiskey, I get whiskey. Notice I did a capital W. Let's do capital EY. It still works. And more than the name, if we look in React DevTools, we should see the entire dog with all its information is now available inside of props.dog, and it is indeed. Okay, so now we just need to work on our markup and displaying that information. So inside of my render, I'm going to begin by just grabbing all of the information we want out of props, so I don't have to keep accessing this.props.source or this.props.dog.source, this.props.blah blah blah. Now I just have dog, so I can say dog.source. Then we're going to begin by putting everything in a row. So I'm going to give this parent div class name first of DogDetails, and then we'll make a row. And then inside of this row, we're going to do another div, and I played around with some different sizes, just like with the last page, the dog list, but the sizes that I liked were 11 for extra small, small, and medium, and then column 5 at large. And what we're going to do is put a card component inside of this. So card is something from Bootstrap, and it's kind of what it sounds like. So we're going to give it class name of card. And while I'm here, I'm also going to do DogDetails-card, mainly so I can style it later. And then inside of the card, we have a couple things we're going to add. The first is an image, and the image source is going to be dog.source. And then we'll also do the same thing with alt. Alt will be dog.name. Now I'm going to give this image a class name from Bootstrap, and it's called card-image-top. And let's see if that's going to show up yet. Okay, not quite. I still need to style this image to shrink it down, so we can't actually see that it's working. Let's add our own CSS file. So import ./dogdetails.css, and then make that file. Dogdetails.css. And honestly, in my other CSS file, I did the same thing. I said dog image 75%. For now, I'll just duplicate this, and instead of dog, I'll say dog details. And the other thing we're missing, if we look at our dog list, we needed a container. So where we put the container, what we could do is eventually refactor this, move the container out into the app or into our routes so that every component is rendered inside of a container. For now, we'll put it right here. So div class name equals container. And then we will put everything inside of that. And now, there we go. It's still quite large, but we're getting our card. And I just realized I mixed this up. I always do that. Column large 5, not column 5 large. Oof, there we go. That's the correct size. We can get rid of this H1 now. That's outside of our grid. We're not really using it. Next, there's a couple things we can do next. We can center the card. Right now it's not centered. But let's begin by adding in a card body. So right now we have the top, which is just an image, but there will be a body below that contains like the dog name and some other information. So after the image, but still inside the card, I'm going to give it a div with a class name of card-body. And then inside of that card body, we'll put a few different things. And the first one is a card title. So in H2, you can experiment with other sizes, but card-title, another Bootstrap class, and we're going to give it a title of dog.name. Okay, so you can see the card showing up now. The next thing we're going to do is add in the age, and we're going to make it slightly muted. So I'm going to make an H4, and this H4 will have a class name of card-subtitle, again coming from Bootstrap, and text-muted. And inside of here, we're going to put the dog.age and then years old. We won't worry about singular versus plural. If there's a 1-year dog, it will be 1 years old. Okay, so that's the muted color, that gray. You can configure all of this within Bootstrap, but we're not going to do that in this video or in this project. Afterwards, we're going to list all of the facts, the information about each dog. Things like this: Whiskey loves eating popcorn, Whiskey is a terrible guard dog, etc. So in DogDetails, rather than putting those directly in the body, the card body, I'm going to go outside of that div, which is ending right here, and I'm going to add a UL and give it a class name, again coming from Bootstrap, of list-group, and then list-group-flush. And this allows us to add in some nice looking list items. So I'm going to make a list item and give each one a class name of li, or list-group-item. And just to show you what it looks like, this is what we end up with. So each one is flush as part of the card, and it has these borders and makes it clear these are little items, list items. but instead of hard coding them like that, we could have more than one fact. So I'm going to do a dog.facts.map, and then for each fact, the thing is that we're going to get an error saying we need a key if we have multiple facts here. And I'm just going to use the index from map. So our facts are inside of an array. And for each one, we're going to make an li with the class name of list group item. And inside of it, we're going to list the fact, which is from here. And we'll give each one a key of I. And there we go. So we could have more than one fact. For example, in whiskey, if I add one more, whiskey is a dog, you can see that it shows up. So we're dynamically adding those in. Great. Now back in DogDetails, the last thing we're going to do down at the bottom is add a link to go back. So I'm just going to make a button. So outside of the UL, I'm going to add another div with the class name of card body. So you can have multiple card bodies per card. Class name card-body. And then inside of there, we can just add our text to start that says go back. We'll just do that. We're going to make it a link, but this is the right spot. So we need to make it a link. Let's do that next. And to do that, we're going to import link from React router DOM. And then instead of just go back, we're going to add a link component. Make sure we close it, and it should say go back. And then the to prop will be /dogs. And is it going to work? Takes us back to the dog list. Now these aren't links yet, we'll get to that, but this works to go back. Next, I'm going to give it some bootstrap styles. So on the link itself, I can give it a class name of btn and then btn info. So btn is just a default button class, and then btn info is the variant, the color. So info is a color name. It's this light blue. If we did something like danger, we get red. There's different, you can change all of those colors, of course. I like info though. It's up to you. There's many variants. Okay, so that's our link to go back. Let's look at Tubby, for example. Dogs/Tubby. Okay, everything looks good. However, this is not centered, so let's work on that. Right now, we're just saying take up 5 columns at large, 5 out of 12. Take up 11 at extra small, small, and medium. So here, it's taking up 11, but it's not quite centered. You can see there's more space over here. So let's fix that by centering it. On the row, I'm going to give a class of justifiedContent center. And there we go. I also want to add a little space so it's not right up against the top. So on our row, we can add a margin top 5, MT-5. It's from Bootstrap. Okay, good enough for now. We'll see how it looks once we add the navbar in. So there are some other styles that I'll do in a separate video at the end about styling things, like the background color. I added a box shadow. You hover, I made the image go from black and white to color, but that's it for the DogDetails component. Next up, we'll work on the navbar as well as adding links in here. We haven't done that just yet.